Chapter 34, A Bow in Hand. The bow for sale in the post was Doomsday in the Black Vader series, which cost $6,680,000 in the store. Its farthest range could reach 2,400 feet. Using this bow, saber arrows could pierce steel armor and the skin of most primitive creatures from more than 900 feet away. However, one would need to have a 7.0 strength rating to draw the string of Doomsday. Normally only those who had maxed out on mutant geno points could reach a 7.0 strength rating, and this requirement was only to draw the string. Unless you could kill with only one shot every time, so that you didn't need a second draw, you would need a rating of more than 8.0 to use the bow. Generally, if one had maxed out on original, primitive and mutant geno points, one's strength rating would reach 10.0, but many would choose to complete evolution and go to Second God Sanctuary before their rating reached 8.0. No wonder no one would buy this bow. Those with the ability to use the bow wouldn't care about such a small amount of money and try to save with a second-hand weapon. Those who couldn't use it wouldn't bother to buy it either. Hansen sent the poster a message and offered $1 million for the bow and arrows, which altogether would probably cost more than $7 million at a store. He had only kept $2 out of the $6 million he earned from selling the golden axe and gave the rest to his mother. Having spent $1 million learning Ghost Haunt, he wasn't sure if he could purchase the bow and arrows with just $1 million. The poster didn't reply. He was either offline or didn't want to dignify his offer with a response. Hansen waited for more than half an hour and almost lost hope. He checked other posts and found nothing. Well, some cheap stuff will have to do for now. Maybe I can get an arrow beast soul in a few days. Hansen comforted himself and went into the shower. When he was back in front of the screen, he found the poster had sent a message to him, which only contained a web page of a well-known trading site, where the price was marked as $1 million. Hansen almost jumped with joy and paid for the items after confirmation. Soon the item was shipped, and would reach planet Roka the next day. God Sanctuary could be used as a transfer station for transporting goods produced in the Alliance. So many transactions between different planets were completed this way, and it was also much faster than interstellar spaceship. The next morning, Hansen got a package from a robot postman. After signing for it, he couldn't wait to open it. The black and purple metal bow had a bowstring like a silver line. Holding the bow in his hands, Hansen immediately felt powerful. The bow was also carefully kept and looked almost like new except for a small scratch. 6 brand new saber alloy arrows were gleaming with a cold shine. To Hansen's surprise, they even came with a matching quiver. It was used, but there was no damage. A bow in my hand, the world is mine. I won't have to risk approaching it the next time I steal a sacred blood creature from Son of Heaven. Hansen stroked the bow and laughed. With no shooting range nearby, Hansen could only try to draw the string a few times. It was indeed quite heavy. Even with his strength, he could only draw a dozen times before his arms started to ache. Not bad. Hansen was pleasantly surprised. He hadn't tested his strength recently, but his rating must be more than 8.0 now, or else he couldn't have used this bow so well. Hansen went to a weapon shop nearby and bought 20 thunder arrows and 20 skyfall arrows. The quiver that could hold 50 arrows still looked a little empty, even with the arrows in it. Although these arrows had impressive names, they were in fact cheap. Each thunder arrow only cost 1,000, and only the arrowhead was made of alloy. It was too stiff and would chip easily on bones or shells. Skyfall arrows were even cheaper, 100 each. They looked like saber arrows but didn't function that well. Hansen only bought Skyfall arrows to practice with, as thunder arrows were too easy to break and the 6 saber arrows were too expensive to be used for practicing. Hansen played with his new bow, Doomsday, for quite a while and fell in love with it. When it was almost time for him to meet his young clients, Hansen took his bow and arrows and entered God's sanctuary. When he arrived where they were supposed to meet, he saw dozens of people surrounding several young men in biological armor and realized that he wasn't the only candidate. Walking around to earn 10,000 easy dollars per day seemed to be a great deal for many. After all, a primitive creature was only worth several hundred, and it also took energy to hunt and move the dead creature around. Han-sen frowned at the crowd and was ready to turn away. He just wanted to find an easy job to earn some money. With such competition, he'd rather look for another job. When he was ready to leave, Han Hao and a few people came together. It looked like they were also coming for the young men. Well, asked Freak himself here, looking sharp with the bow and arrows. Did you come to protect the masters as well? A young man next to Han Hao ridiculed him, with a tone of exaggeration. His remark got the attention of the crowd, as Freak was well known in steel armor shelter. People suddenly started to heckle Han-sen. Freak, who do you think you are? Freak, can you even beat the original creatures? It's more likely that the young masters will need to protect him. Chapter 35, Who Should Go? Freak was so infamous that a torrent of scornful abuse was lavished on him. The young men who were paying came to them, and one of them with harsh, angular features curiously looked at Han-sen and said, "You are the legendary Freak?" "Yes," Han-sen answered casually. He did not think it was a bad thing, because in the entire steel armor shelter, he was the only one who had ever stabbed Qin Xian in the butt. This was a kind of achievement in a sense. The young man was obviously curious about Han's senator. Suddenly he said, "You are also here for the job?" Han-sen nodded. "If you don't like the idea, I can go right now." "No, if you do not have any questions, we can sign the contract right here," the young man quickly said. A roar went up in the crowd as they heard the young man's decision. Even the young man's friends looked surprised. They pulled the young man to the side and said, "Yuan, that's Freak. What are you going to do with him?" "That's right, Yuan. If we are in danger, he will probably run even faster than us. It's just a waste of money. I've hired him, and you can choose the rest." The young man named Yuan insisted and signed the contract with Han-sen. The others didn't say much after that and selected several more candidates who looked experienced. Han Hao showed them his mutant beast soul weapon and was chosen. The two coming with Han Hao showed some skill and got the job as well. Freak, you got lucky thanks to your young master's kindness and curiosity, Lu Feng, one of the two, said when walking past Han-sen. "My luck has always been good," Han-sen said faintly. The clients had selected 10 experienced men to protect them in hunting primitive creatures. With such a team, they could even hunt primitive creatures by herd. Those who had been hired were in a good mood and tried to flatter the clients all the time. They clearly understood the background of these young men who were paying them. The clients actually had very good fighting skills, and they must have graduated from posh schools. Although they had just entered God's sanctuary, their fitness and skills were much better than Han-sen's when he had just arrived. They were only lacking the experience of hunting. When the clients were hunting primitive creatures, Han-sen was just practicing archery on the side. Initially he had chosen to practice archery because it was less demanding than other weapons. He was unlikely to be able to learn advanced techniques of sword or knife fighting in the public education system, while all he needed for archery was accuracy. Han-sen was still getting to know the performance and characteristics of Doomsday, so he had selected some of the trees nearby as his targets to practice on. Freak, you are just taking up space. Why are you shooting in vain and ignoring our clients? Lu Feng was confused by Han-sen's behavior and looked at his shots contemptuously. You can't even shoot something within 60 feet. Han-sen did not look at Lu Feng or reply to him. He was just trying the arrow and did not focus on one target, and that was why his shots looked messy. Just let him be. It was just a charity act. Our clients didn't expect him to help at all, other hired hands laughed. That is true. Just be grateful, Freak. Lu Feng spit and joined the rest. do not say you know me." Han Hao found a chance to whisper to Han Sen and went back to laugh with his friends. The clients were making incredible progress. In the beginning, they needed some assistance, while they soon became better and could hunt some rather vicious primitive creatures one-on-one. Indeed, posh schools had great teaching outcomes. Those who were in integrated compulsory education wouldn't dare to hunt primitive creatures alone with no previous experience. It went so well that everyone lost their vigilance. When the clients were hunting 3 primitive spotted beasts, one of the beasts played dead and attacked a young client when he approached it. Han Hao and others didn't expect this, and the spotted beast was too close to the client for them to rescue him. In an instant, the claws of the spotted beast were on the delicate neck of the young man. The young client was horrified, regretting that he wasn't wearing his alloy helmet. But it was too late for that. Everyone watching screamed in horror. Whoosh! An arrow flew by the client's face and hit the spotted beast in the left eye. The beast whimpered and fell to the ground. Han Hao and the rest swarmed to the spotted beast and cut its corpse into pieces. "Ass freak, why did you shoot the arrow? You almost hurt Qing." Lu Feng turned around and scolded Han Sen. Other people all followed him, criticizing Han Senator. They were secretly ashamed, but instead of self-reflection, they chose to blame Han Senator. In their view, Han Sen just shot the beast by pure luck, because us freak could never be so good at anything. "Get lost!" Yuan suddenly shouted with a dark face. "Did you hear that, us freak? Yuan just asked you to go," cried Lu Feng. "I'm letting you go." Yuan stared at Lu Feng coldly. "I paid you to protect us, and what did you do when Qing was in danger?" "Nothing. And you even tried to blame the only person who did his job. All of you, get lost, and I don't want to see you again." Chapter 36, Archery Master. "Yuan, you can let us go, but according to our contract, this is a breach. You will have to pay us the rest of the money," sneered Lu Feng. "Just go." Yuan threw a few stacks of money at them and didn't look at them again. Lu Feng and the rest picked up the money. Although they were angry, they didn't dare to harm the clients because they knew who these young clients were. They gazed at Han Sen and said, "Misters, we are far from the shelter, so please be careful, as you are trusting someone unreliable." "He is 100 times more reliable than you," Yuan replied. The hired ones didn't dare to express their anger in front of Yuan, so they just left. "Ass, your arrow was so powerful," commended Qing after the rest were chased away. He didn't want to call Han Sen ass freak but awkwardly discovered that he didn't know his name. His rating must have reached 7.0 to use Doomsday. "Of course it was powerful," said Yuan. 7.0? But they said that he, Qing and the other clients looked at Han Sen and his bow, unconvinced. After all, the story of S-Freak was so well known that even they knew about it. I mean at least 7.0. He shot so many arrows in practice, and if his strength hadn't reached 8.0, it would certainly not be so easy for him, Yuan said, looking at Han Sen. 8.0. They were even more surprised and kept looking at Han Sen as if they hadn't seen him before. Anyone with an 8.0 rating would be rather advanced in First God Sanctuary, so they couldn't believe S-Freak would be so strong. "Let me try your bow?" One client still didn't believe Yuan's words. Han Sen smiled and handed Doomsday to him. The young client held it with both hands and tried to pull the string, but the string didn't even move. He tried a few times more and still failed to draw the string. Although they graduated from top schools and had practiced hyper-geno arts as kids, their bodies hadn't been modified by geno points, so their strength could reach 3.5 at best, which was far below the requirement to use Doomsday. "You are so weak. Let me." Another client could not stand to watch and grabbed the bow. He too had failed after a few tries. Everyone gave it a shot except for Yuan, and none could draw the string. Only then had they felt impressed by Han Sen. Archery was practiced by very few people and required a lot of effort. So most people didn't know much about bows and arrows, let alone how good Doomsday was. For example, Han Hao and his friends had no idea that Han Sen's bow was worth millions, or they wouldn't have ridiculed him like that. The clients stopped underestimating Han Sen, not least because Han Sen also had saved Qing's life. They asked his name and called him Sen from then on. After all, God's sanctuary was a world where only the strong were respected, and Han Sen's archery and strength were truly impressive. "Sen, would you show us real archery skills?" Qing proposed. All the other clients looked at Han Sen with great anticipation. "My archery skills are just ordinary," Hansen laughed. "Don't be modest." "When one is being too modest, one is actually proud," Qing said. "Okay, I will try to shoot then." Han Sen also itched to exercise his skills. Since he received Doomsday, he hadn't tested its limits yet. The clients were overjoyed. Han Sen looked around and walked to a hillside. He aimed at something and slowly drew a saber arrow. As he drew the string, blue and swollen veins popped on his arms. The arrow left the string in the blink of an eye and disappeared in the woods. Did he miss? Qing and others didn't hear any prey being hit and thought he had missed. "It is too far away. The woods must be at least 400 yards from here." "It is understandable to miss," said Qing. "Come on, let's go and find out," Han Sen said and walked down the hill into the woods. The clients followed with suspicion. 100 meters into the woods, they saw a spotted beast nailed on a tree with an arrow through its head. "No wonder we did not hear a thing." The arrow directly destroyed the nerves of the spotted beast and it didn't even have time to shriek. Everyone was so impressed. It was at least 400 yards from where Han Sen had been standing, and the beast was killed with just one shot. Han Sen's archery must be among the best in First God's sanctuary. After that, all the clients worshipped Hansen and did everything he said. Han Sen protected them for half a month and received 150,000 in cash. The clients wanted to sign a long-term contract with Han Sen, but he declined. He was only short of money at the moment. In the long run, he still needed to focus on his own evolution. Han Sen returned to Steel Armor Shelter alone and was stopped by those who had been chased away by Yuan at the gate. These men were led by Lu Feng, and Han Hao was also among them. "Ass freak, you have really pissed me off. How can you make it up to me?" asked Lu Feng, cracking his knuckles while slowly approaching Han Sen. Chapter 37, Whose Broadsword? A crowd of spectators started to gather. They were used to seeing Han Sen getting bullied. "How do you want me to compensate you?" said Han Sen calmly, watching Lu Feng approaching him. "Let me kick your ass," Lu Feng said, throwing a punch at Han Sen's face. Lu Feng's punch was fierce and fast. If Han Sen was hit, his nose would be smashed. When everyone was thinking that he would suffer, Han Sen leaned his body and dodged the punch. Meanwhile, he tripped Lu Feng with his leg and made him fall on his face. Lu Feng fell so hard that his nose was bleeding and his eyes were watering. Burning with anger, he drew his alpha alloy broadsword from the sheath and slashed it toward Han Sr., "Little scum. How dare you resist? I'll kill you." Han Hao had mixed feelings watching this. Although he despised Han Sen was still his cousin, and Han Hao felt terrible watching him being bullied and perhaps getting killed. But if he helped Han Sen and people knew him to be the cousin of S-Freak, how could he stay at Steel Armor Shelter? Having hesitated for a while, Han Hao turned his face to the side, deliberately avoid seeing Han. Senator Han Hao thought that he would immediately hear Han Sen's screams, but the screams he heard were not from Han Sen, but from Lu Feng. Han Hao quickly turned to see what had happened and couldn't believe his own eyes. Lu Feng's alpha alloy broadsword was now in Han Sen's hand and Lu Feng himself was pinned to the ground with his arm twisted behind himself, screaming while too scared to struggle. Han Hao did not see how it happened, but others all saw clearly. They were so surprised that they stood there with their mouths wide open. When Lu Feng slashed his broadsword at Han Sen, everyone thought Freak was doomed. But as soon as Lu Feng wielded the alpha alloy broadsword, Han Sen grabbed his hand and twisted, bringing Lu Feng to his knees. Han Sen then knocked his back with a knee and held him down to the floor. No one could believe that Freak would have such fine movements and were all in a daze. There was no sound except for Lu Feng's screams. "What are you doing? Kill this bastard!" "Ouch!" Lu Feng shouted to the onlookers while screaming. Crack! His arm was broken by Han Sen before he could even finish the sentence. Covered in cold sweat, Lu Feng was deathly pale. Lu Feng's friends saw this and rushed to Han Sen, raising their weapons. Han Sen was still holding Lu Feng's alpha alloy broadsword in his hand, and used it to block the first alloy weapon swung at him. To his surprise, the weapon was cut in half by Lu Feng's broadsword instantaneously. This dumbass had a really nice alpha alloy broadsword. It's at least worth 1 or 2 million, Han Sen thought and decided not to give it back. In a short while, all the other weapons were cut off by Han Sen, and their owners were scared off. No one dared to attack Han Sen anymore. Han Hao was stunned, almost thinking he was in a dream. Lu Feng had a strength rating of 6.7 and a nice weapon, so he enjoyed quite a lot of attention in steel armor shelter. Although Han Hao had a mutant beast soul weapon, he knew he could not match Lu Feng. All of a sudden, Lu Feng became the one lying on the floor without his weapon, while Han Sen became the winner. The change was so drastic that Han Hao couldn't process it. Hadn't he been isolated by both Qin Xian and Son of Heaven since he entered the shelter? Didn't he fail to hunt even a primitive creature? Didn't he? Han Hao looked at Han Sen blankly, with a variety of complex emotions entangled in his mind. Han Sen did not continue the fight with the rest, but went back to take Lu Feng's sheath away, hung the sheath on his own belt, and returned his new broadsword to his new sheath. "The next time you want compensation, just come to me," said Han Sen as he strode toward the gate of steel armor shelter. The onlookers all looked at him as if it was the first time they saw him. "Stop!" Someone approached riding a beast soul mount when Han Sen was about to enter the gate. It was Luo Tianyang, Son of Heaven's henchman. "Luo, Freak broke my arm and seized my broadsword. You have to avenge me," shouted Lu Feng in delight at the sight of Luo Tianyang. "Dushabag." Luo Tianyang first glanced at Lu Feng and then at Han Sr. "I was wondering who was so daring to hurt my guy." "So, it was you, scum." Luo Tianyang took out his alloy whip, and whacked it at Han Sen. Han Sen paused and wielded his broadsword at the whip. When the two weapons collided, Han Sen and Luo Tianyang both shuddered. Luo Tianyang suddenly shouted, "How come you have such strength?" Luo Tianyang's own strength rating had reached 9.6. Although with this whack he did not use all his strength, Han Sen must have had at least an 8.0 rating to be able to block his whip, which he could not believe. Chapter 38, My Guy. This person must die. Luo Tianyang suddenly had an urge to kill Han Sen and was about to raise his whip again. When he looked at Han Sen, however, he stopped and his whole body became tense. Han Sen had put away the broadsword and held Doomsday in his hands. Drawing the string to the fullest, he pointed the arrowhead at Luo Tianyang. Although Luo Tianyang did not recognize Doomsday, thanks to his rich experience of fighting, he could smell danger from Han Sen and his bow and stayed completely still. The two were into a deadlock. Luo Tianyang did not dare to move, and Han Sen did not have the confidence to kill Luo Tianyang with only one shot. Even time seemed to stand still. The onlookers were completely shocked. When Han Sen beat Lu Feng and his friends, they simply couldn't believe it, and now he was even well matched with Luo Tianyang? Luo Tianyang was one of Son of Heaven's henchmen, His strength rating was near 10.0, and even he didn't dare to move with Han Sen's arrow pointed at him. Anyone with a strength rating of more than 9.0 would be among the top 100 in steel armor shelter, where there were more than 100,000 people. That someone like this could be scared by Han Sen was an overwhelming fact to all. No one knew how Han Sen could gain such strength when isolated by both Qin Xian and Son of Heaven. Han Sen, put down your bow, said Qin Xian, leading her gang, who were all riding beast soul mounts. Han Sen put away his bow and arrow. His strength was still weaker than Luo Tianyang, and Han Sen was not sure if he could shoot his opponent when Luo had his guard up. Keeping the posture was consuming his energy very fast, and the deadlock was not good for Han Sen. Miss Qin, I'll kill this bastard for you, said Luo Tianyang, whipping at Han Sen, who had already disarmed himself. Han Sen seemed to be prepared for this and was about to block the whip with Doomsday. Before he acted, a beast soul bronze sword was thrown over and hit the whip. The strength of the throw was so fierce that the whip fell from Luo Tianyang's hand. I will discipline my guy, and you can mind your own business. Qin Xian looked at Luo Tianyang coldly and summoned back her sword before she rode into the shelter. Follow me, Qin Xian turned back and commanded Han Sen. Han Sen quickly caught up with her and followed her gang into the shelter. The entire steel armor shelter was suddenly in an uproar. As Freak beat Lu Feng and his friends, was well matched against Luo Tianyang and was, most importantly, declared by Qin Xian to be her guy. All the news had driven everyone mad. No one understood what had happened, it was all guesswork. Did they develop a love affair from the stab? I have to learn from As Freak and stab a beautiful and capable woman in the ass. Maybe I can become rich and powerful. Qin Xian looks so serious, but she is actually a flirt. Rumors spread across the entire steel armor shelter, and Han Sen was once again put under the spotlight. However, Han Sen's strength was not really the focus. People cared more about whether he was Qin Xian's boy toy. Even Qin Xian's gang would look at Han Sen weirdly. You know archery? Asked Qin Xian after she called Han Sen to a halt. I used to practice, Han Sen shrugged. You can use Doomsday, so you must have worked hard on it, said Qin Xian matter-of-factly. You can join Bullseye and follow me in the future. No, Han Sen refused. Qin Xian bit her lips and said snappily, you just offended Luo Tianyang. Without my protection, do you suppose he'd let you live? Thank you for your kindness, but I will deal with it myself, Han Sen said indifferently. You should have known who I am. My men are more or less related to the military, and Bullseye belongs to me. Follow me and you will gain great advantages when applying for military schools. Qin Xian suppressed her anger and said to Han Sen. I never wanted to go to a military school. Han Sen knew that he could apply to a military school for further education after he finished integrated compulsory education. However, all military schools had high requirements of fitness. If one's fitness index was below 10 before the first evolution, one had no chance at military schools. For Han Sen, to reach 10 in the fitness index was not hard, but he wasn't interested in going to school at all. He'd rather put more effort into hunting. Exasperated, Qin Xian said, without education from military school and an aristocratic title, you could only be an ordinary soldier when you are of age to serve. Only through a military school can you become something in the army. At least by then you wouldn't have been sacrificed.